Now, sometimes you want to store multiple values in a variable. Okay, so I'm going to put a little note here. Variables can also store multiple values. Okay, and this is going to be markdown and go. Here, for example, I hit the play twice, and then I did something and created two cells. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to use this cell. So how do we store? Why would we want to store multiple values? Well, let's say, for example, I go to the supermarket and I buy some items. So my items are going to be oranges, avocados, cookies, milk, and eggs. Okay? Well, I would love to store this set of values. Python for this has a very specific way of telling, of saying, hey, I have a list of things here. I'm going to store it in a drawer labeled items. Again, these labels, you can label whatever they want. I just like to label something that is sensible and tells me a little bit of what is stored in there. Well, so the way Python will store this, it will say, well, oranges, avocados, cookies, milk, and eggs, those are words. And because they're words, they're text. Because they're text, they have to be, each one of them has to be between quotes. And there. Now, because it's a list, each one of these elements must be separated by a comma. And the last thing is, because it's a list, I want to put square braces around the items. This is how lists are stored. In this case, it is very important to note we have a list of text items, of text elements. Okay? Text elements in programming in general, they're called strings because it's a string of characters, of individual letters. So this is a list of strings. That's what we call it. What if I wanted to store the prices of these things? So prices would be another list, but this time it's going to contain the prices of these items. So for example, the oranges are $3.99, the avocados are $4.09, the cookies are going to be $2.99, for example, and then the eggs are going to be $7.99. I'm sorry, the milk is going to be $7.99, and the eggs are going to be, I don't know, $32. Very expensive eggs. Okay, so now this list, prices, is a list of decimals. It's a list of floating point values. Floating point values also are called floats. So items is a list of strings, and prices is a list of floats or decimal values. And I can print these lists. I can say print, and then if I want to print them side by side, I can say items, comma, prices. If I want to print two things side by side, I can use the comma. That's a fast way to do this. And you can see here that it printed oranges, avocados, cookies, milk, and eggs, and then the corresponding prices. Okay? Now, lists have something interesting. Lists can have properties. So for example, I want to know how many items are there. Well, you can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 items, right? I can have Python tell me how many items are there. I'm going to use the print statement, so I can print the how many items are there, and the instruction to know how many items are there is called length, or len for abbreviation. And then I'm going to print the length of what? Well, of the drawer, the variable called items. I'm going to print the length of items. If I run this, I'll see 5. See, there's 5 elements. So now we can start doing some things that are interesting. There's another thing that I can do with lists. If a list has numbers in it, I can get the sum, the total of all those numbers. So for example, I'm going to print the sum of the prices. So I'm going to print the length of the items and the sum of the prices now. 2 things. Here it is, 5 items, and all the prices total 51.06. Right? So now I'm printing that. Now look at what I can do. I can now print the sum of the prices divided by the number of items. And that gets me, whoops, come on, and that gets me the average price. This is the average, right? You add all the prices and you divide it by how many are there, and that gives you the average. So now we can average things. If you think of data science, we can get the average of, I don't know, salaries or whatever it is that you're analyzing, right? We can start doing interesting things. Now, it is important to say that print, len, and sum are functions. In Python, functions do things, and in programming in general, functions do things. They perform actions. So for example, len items, len counts. What is it going to count? The list items. And then it returns a value, the number 5. Okay? Whoa. So then, len is the name of the function. It receives one parameter, which is what I need to work with. So if I'm going to count, I need something to count. And then it returns something else. In this case, a number, which is the length of the items. Sum is the same way. Sum, it sums. What is it going to sum? Well, whatever is in prices. And what does it return? A sum. Okay? Now, because this in the end return a number or return something, we can also put them in variables. I could have done something like this. I could have said number of items is len items, for example, and then total is the sum of the prices. And then I could say the average is the total divided by the number of items. And then I can just print the average. So let's analyze this little bit of code. In here, I have a variable that I called num items. I could have called this anything I wanted. I chose num items because it tells me that this drawer, if you will, labeled num items, is going to contain the number of items. How do I get the number of items? Well, I run this function, len, on the list items, and this will return the number of items, which then will be stored in num items. So this returns the number 5, and that number 5 is stored in this variable. Here are some prices. Sum is a function that actually adds elements of a list. What list am I going to add the elements of? Well, the list is called prices. And when I perform this action, I will return a number. That number will be stored in a variable called total. Then I'm going to create a new variable, average, AVG. You can spell it average however you want. It's just a name. It's just a label. And the average is what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the total, which is a number, and I'm going to divide it by the number of items, which is another number, and that division is going to result in yet another number. That number is going to go in this drawer, the drawer average, and then I'm just going to print it. So let's run this bit of code. And you see that it gave me the average, 10.212. the same thing as it is here. Okay? Now the beauty here, look what happens. If I add an item here, say X, and I'm going to add another item. What else do I buy in a supermarket? Maybe bananas. Bananas. And let's say bananas are $2.99. Okay? I've added an item. I'm going to run this bit of code. And now I change. Items is different. It's not 5 items anymore. And prices are not just, whatever added to 52. I'm going to go to this chunk. And len of items is going to, again, go to the items variable, compute that, and put that in num items. Prices, sum is going to sum the prices, the new prices, and it's going to put it in total. And then the average is going to be, again, a new recomputation of the average. So if we run this, you see the average has changed now. It's lower, $9, more or less, right? Now, this is part of the beauty of Jupyter Notebooks. Notice that I did not have to run this chunk or this cell. I did not have to run those cells. I only run the cells that were involved in the computation. This is beautiful about Jupyter Notebooks. On a regular editor, you would have to run the whole program again, all of the chunks. And if a chunk takes a long time, you would have to run it anyways. In Jupyter Notebooks, just run the chunks that you're interested in. This is what we're going to cover about variables. We're going to cover more in later lessons to prepare you to work with data science projects. Please like, subscribe, and enjoy.